Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth in the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. The corpse in the village. It was Harper's 21st birthday, and we went out for drinks. My treat, of course. My birthday was a few weeks ago, and we celebrated together in secret, since she wasn't allowed to actually go to a bar yet. We've been friends since preschool. We were always at each other's houses. We recently bought a house in a smaller city of Minnesota. Harper was having the time of her life right now. SAS was dancing with this guy. He kind of gave off weird vibes. But I didn't want to destroy Harper's night by being overly protective. So I just watched them closely. The town we lived in was so small, it gained the nickname, the Village. I didn't want to drink too heavily, in case I needed to step in and get Harper away from the guy she was dancing with. She was laughing and smiling. She was just so happy, and I was happy for her. It has been a long few years for her. This has been the happiest I've seen Harper since losing her mom a few years back. Her mother was in a plane crash, and it destroyed Harper. She started drinking and smoking, but I finally got her to stop. It wasn't easy, though. It was super tough. Harper still has those days where she will just lock herself in her room. But I check on her every hour, seeing if she needs anything. The guy Harper was dancing with went to the restroom, I think. So I went to tall with her. Good birthday so far? I asked her. Yes. Thank you so much, Hadley. The music is awesome, and the drinks are very tasty. She replied. I smiled at her and decided to order some food. I ordered Piggly Wiggly fries and a burger for myself, and pizza and wings for Harper. I went back to the table to wait for our food, and Harper was at the bar flirting with the bartender. The bartender was returning her flirtations happily. He seemed sweet enough. He didn't have as much as a weird aura as the other guy she was dancing with previously. The said guy came back and brought Harper back to the dance floor, and I was alert and ready to strike if need be. He wasn't being rough with Harper or anything, but I didn't trust him at all. I have always been the protective friend, and I know I may seem like I'm too protective, but I care about my friends. The sadness on the bartender's face was heartbreaking. He seemed to like Harper really well, but that jerk took her away from the bartender. The waitress brought our food out, and I waved Harper over, and she skipped over happily. We ate our food, and she told me she was ready to leave. I nodded, and we ate, just talking and laughing. But guess who was watching? I tried to ignore him, but that anxious feeling was still there. We finished eating and left. We took a taxi just to be safe. We arrived home, and I helped her inside and to the bathroom so she wouldn't fall over. I left so she could shower, and I made sure the doors and windows were locked. I felt safer being home, but that guy's face and his aura was still haunting me. After Harper's shower, we cut her cake and enjoyed a piece with cold glasses of milk. Harper wanted us to watch a movie, so that's what we did. We talked more than we watched the movie. She told me how she really felt a connection with the bartender. I told her I could sense their connection, and it was a deep one. I told her that I hope they would cross paths again. She also told me how that the guy she was dancing with made her uncomfortable. I told her he did give off a weird vibe, but I didn't want to ruin her night. She told me it would have been just fine if I had mentioned how weird he made me feel. Around 5 in the morning, we decided to go to bed. Harper was tired, and I was tired, so we were ready for bed. Harper had fallen asleep with ease, but I seemed to struggle. I just couldn't shake the negative feeling I had. That guy was still haunting my thoughts. That guy triggered something in me, and I couldn't handle it. I ended up falling asleep, but not without nightmares. They were horrible, gory, and just flat out terrifying. I woke up all sweaty, and my heart was racing. I have always had nightmares, but these were worse. I didn't wake up until 1 the next afternoon. But Harper was awake, and she was very cheerful. She was making us lunch. She was a very good cook. She was humming and dancing around the kitchen. I guess the only thing she really needed was that party last night. Maybe we'll go shopping today after I get woken up and I eat. Harper was making her famous burritos that she loves to make. They were always so good. I still had a got to give her, but I figured I would give it to her later. I got to the kitchen and greeted her with a smile, and she smiled back at me and went back to cooking. After we ate, we went shopping together, like old times. I worked the night shift at the hospital, so I didn't have to be in until 7 tonight. We went to the mall and stopped in Bath and Body Works first. We wanted some candles. Our place still smelled new. We got some perfumes, lotions, and body wash. We got the lot. We probably shouldn't have, but we're girls. Our next stop was Hot Topic. That was our all-time favorite store. After we spent money there, we went to Rue 21 to buy more clothes. After our shopping spree, we went home and I got ready for work. I told Harper bye and that I loved her, and I headed to work. I clocked in at 7 p.m. and started my duties. It was a long night. Morning arrived slowly. I clocked out at 7 a.m. and drove home after stopping at Starbucks. I stepped in the house, and it was quiet until I heard Harper scream. I dropped the coffees and rushed upstairs. That's when I saw the guy that was dancing with her last night, and he had his knife to her throat. I tried to stop him, but that only led to me getting a slashed hand. My best friend got stabbed that morning. I called 911, and they said they would send someone right away. Harper died before the ambulance arrived. The guy's eyes were nothing but a black abyss. He wasn't human. I tried for weeks to get the cops to keep the investigation open, but without any evidence, they couldn't give me closure. That guy got away with killing my best friend. I constantly wish it was me that got killed, but it didn't happen that way. The guy wasn't from this realm, but people would think I was crazy. After all, demons don't exist, right? Well, I knew they did now, and I will forever remember that morning my best friend was killed. Murder in a dream. Halvar sat in his office, browsing the police file of suspects and cursing his brain for not remembering anything regarding the incident. The doctors told him the blow to his head was severe. It gave him a concussion, after all, and that it might take time for his memory to come back, if it did at all. Hall, without turning his eyes from the computer screen, he waved a hand. "Come in, Siegfried." His assistant walked into the office, placing a hand on Halvar's shoulder. "How are you? Still can't remember anything," he said, scanning the faces of every known criminal in Norway. He recognized a few of them, having captured them himself, but none rang a bell as to whom might have killed two of his friends and placed one in a coma. "He's got to be here somewhere." "Hall, you should rest," Siegfried said, placing a cup on his desk. Steam rose from it, spreading an invigorating scent of coffee. "We are looking into every possible avenue. I have to regain my memory," he said, scrolling further. He had to. It was the only way. He must have seen the killer just before the hit on the head knocked him out cold. His mind held the only real evidence they had, the only evidence to help turn suspicion off of Halvar himself. Siegfried sighed and retracted her hand. We talked to Olaf, the studio owner, again. He said he left the place early that evening and didn't see anyone but you and your friends coming in. Nobody else was scheduled for practice either. The single security camera caught no one else entering the building. "That camera's position is awkward," Halvar said, rubbing his eyes. He hadn't slept in a day. He didn't like what sleep brought. The killer could have entered through the back or by the window. Did Olaf tell you about his back door? How he's too cheap to have it repaired? Anyone could enter. In fact, could the man himself be responsible? He did complain often about the noise of Halvar and his band playing, even though they paid to rent his studio for practice. Hall, I can't imagine how hard this must be for you. I know how close you were with them, how much music meant to you. I hope that Bjarka makes it. And I hope you get some rest." Halvar sighed and listened to Sigfrida's footsteps leaving the office. The cup of coffee rested on the desk, smelling heavenly. He turned to say thank you, but his assistant was gone. Instead, he noticed the pictures on the office walls, his formal detective license, a photo with the whole police department for Christmas 2 years ago, and a framed picture of him and his 3 friends playing live at a local festival. 2 of them were dead now, 1 in a coma, the result of some lunatic bursting into the studio and killing everybody. Halvar himself survived by sheer luck, it would seem. "I'll find out who did this," he thought, turning back to the screen. "And no law or moral code can save them from me when I do." He spent the rest of the night searching through the files, as well as his memory, both seemingly void of the information he sought. Eventually, sleep caught up with Halvar, and with it came the nightmare. Each night since the incident, he had been having roughly the same dream. It was almost as if his mind was trying to tell him through dreams what he couldn't remember consciously. Halvar got to relive the murder of his friends every night for the past 2 weeks. He got to see every bloody detail, but never the killer's face. That detail always eluded him, and with each dream, he thought he was getting closer to the truth. Each time, the nightmare would reveal a bit more of what happened. That was if his mind wasn't just making everything up out of trauma. In the dream, he was often in the killer's shoes, after all. But he could never see his face. This night, the dream started as usual, right in the middle of it, and from the point of view of the killer. Halvar saw himself as the murderer, picking up his guitar and crushing his friend's head with it. They were in the middle of practice and were stunned at the sudden outburst of violence by the intruding killer. Before anyone could react, Halvar smashed the heads of all 3 of his band colleagues with his own guitar. Then the dream shifted, where he could see outside from himself, how he got hit on the head too, by a figure without a face. The prosecutor then ran away, and when Halvar wanted to follow, the figure disappeared into the shadows. Halvar woke up, sweating and breathing heavily. He looked around and noticed he had fallen asleep in his office. The place was dark, no light coming from the hallway. Everyone must have left already. He grabbed a pen and paper and wrote down everything he could remember from the dream, recording every detail. The drawer by his desk was filled with accounts from his dream, and he used them to correlate the event, searching for consistent patterns and hints. As incredible as it seemed, his dreams were the only clues he had. But he couldn't share them with his colleagues. They would never take it seriously. "The killer used my guitar," Halvar murmured, comparing tonight's dream with the others. But the last thing I remember was playing on my guitar. Then, nothing. So, whoever did it, I must have trusted them to let them have my guitar. The evidence found at the crime scene clearly pointed at Halvar's guitar as the murder weapon. It had blood and tissue of all 4 of them on its body, all found on one side, suggesting that the killer used it as a club to repeatedly strike at each one. The guitar's body was solid steel and hard plastic, and it cracked under the brutal hits, but did not break apart, surprisingly. So the killer must have known how strong the instrument was, so he could perform precise strike with it and not have it break in the middle of his assault. That would create an opening for the others to defend themselves. The only person that Halvar would entrust his instrument to, and who would know so much about it, other than his band friends, was Olaf himself, the studio owner. Halvar even once took lessons from the man, who showed him a few tricks on the guitar from his heyday as a roadie. It wasn't rational to think that Bjarka would take the guitar, kill the other 2, attempt to kill Halvar, and then knock himself out. How would he do that? And it was just as absurd to think that Halvar himself did it, as was the unspoken suspicion. How would he swing the guitar at himself, knocking himself out with it? The angles didn't match, but the blood and the concussion did. Somebody else must have been present there that night, and the more Halvar thought about it, the more he suspected Olaf. The studio was his. He had access to the camera. The band knew and trusted him. He did complain about the noise, but was that reason enough to attempt a quadruple homicide? Or was there something else? A form of jealousy against Halvar and the band? Olaf did say that he never had a chance to be in a band, but that it was his greatest wish. Halvar checked the clock. It was something past 3 a.m. He considered, looking at the photo of him and his friends. Then he left his office. Olaf's house was next to his studio. It was part of the same building complex, just on the other side, so the owner had privacy as well as quick access to the place. Halvar sat in his car, parked outside the man's house. There was a light turned on inside. Olaf was the one that found us, Halvar thought. He came into the studio and called the police. In the report, the man said he had heard shouts and how the music suddenly stopped. So he had gone to check. The more Halvar considered, the more sense it made. The man pretended to have stumbled upon the murder scene, to have an alibi. Halvar waited in his car, considering whether he should confront the man, considering if he could even do it. As he waited outside of Olaf's house, the pain in his head from the blow returned. Halvar took some painkillers and watched the window, wanting to catch Olaf in some act that would rat him out. In a whirlwind of thoughts and with a headache pounding, Halvar must have fallen in a pill-induced sleep, as suddenly His mind was back at the incident. This time, he saw more of it. "That sounds terrible, Hall," Bjarka said, grimacing on the drums. "Are you sure you can play the guitar, mate?" Halvar ignored the remark and focused on playing the solo. They were working on a new song, and it was a pain to get it right. "Sounds to me like he's butchering somebody," Damus, the bassist, commented. "Must be the stress at work, I reckon." They laughed. Typical guy talk. Halvar tried his best, but failed. His fingers were just too slow. The solo too technical and complex. His mind was sluggish, indeed from stress at work. There was a dangerous killer on the loose, and they had finally gotten a lead. Halvar just wanted to relax and let go for a few hours with his buddies. But all he could think of was the brutality of the recent murders. "Hey, we're going to get something to eat," Bjarka said. "You want something, Hall?" "No," Halvar said. "I'm good." He just wanted to get the damn solo right. "All right then," Bjarka said. "But don't you try and steal my roles when we come back." They left. Halvar kept practicing. Then Olaf entered the studio. "Hey, mate," the older man said, wearing his long gray hair in a tail. "Sound like you're having some trouble." "Yeah," Halvar said. "I can't do this transition here. It's too fast for me." Halvar showed what he meant by playing the part at half speed. Olaf nodded. "I see. Can I try?" "Sure," Halvar sighed. He handed the man his guitar. "Knock yourself out." "I'll knock you out with my veteran skill," the man said, and took the guitar. The dream then changed to Halvar being in the killer's shoes and butchering everybody, until seeing himself in third person again, being hit by some man with no face. Halvar ran after the man, and this time he caught him in a corner. The man had long hair. Halvar jolted awake. He was sitting in his car, parked outside of Olaf's home. The light in the house had turned off. "It's him," he thought, breathing heavily. He did it. Halvar got out of the car and walked to the studio entrance. He had the key, as he and his friends were regulars. It was the little hours of the morning, and there was nobody outside, not even a stray dog. Halvar unlocked the door and removed the police tape, entering the crime scene. He knew that the studio and Olaf's house were connected by a passage for practicality. Halvar used the light on his phone to make his way through the dark interior. If it really was you, Olaf? Halvar hurried through the passage, entering the man's living quarters. He'd been there once or twice when Olaf invited them over for a drink. Building his alibi, plotting, even then, Halvar crossed the living room and climbed the stairs to the man's bedroom. He didn't think of what his plan was. He just wanted to have a look at the man, to see his murderous face. As he came to the bedroom, where he saw the light coming before, Halvar paused. He heard weeping from inside. His heart pounded like a drum, and he burst into the room. Feeling guilt for what you did, the man, lying under the blankets, jumped up in shock. Halvar turned on the light and noticed he had taken out his gun on instinct. Olaf gazed at him with wide eyes, red, as if from crying. "What? Don't deny it! You did it!" Halvar shouted, his hand trembling. "I saw you! It was you!" The man's face was twisted in a mixture of shock and fear. "What are you talking about? I saw you in my dream," Halvar said. "You took my guitar and..." The man was crying. There were candles placed on his windowsill, alongside pictures of Halvar and his friends. The two that had been killed had a rosary around them. He was grieving. "What's all this?" Halvar asked, pointing at the pictures. "They were my friends too," Olaf said. "Your band reminded me of when I was young." His gaze focused on the gun in Halvar's hands. "You think I did it?" It wasn't a question, but a statement. One in which Halvar wasn't so sure anymore. He looked into the man's eyes and saw sadness underneath all the shock and betrayal. "I can't prove it, Hall," Olaf said, sniffing. "But by God, I'm not the man you should be pointing that gun at." "Who then?" Halvar shouted. "Who did it? Who killed my friends and nearly killed me?" He pointed the gun at the man's head. Olaf began weeping. "The guitar was in your hands when I found you." "Yes, the killer wanted to confuse the forensics by framing one of us. No one else came or left the studio. Hall, what are you saying?" Olaf glanced at the gun again, then at Halvar. "Are you here to kill me too?" Halvar balked. Olaf pissed himself, a dark spot appearing on the bed sheets. The man was genuinely afraid of him. Halvar suddenly felt deep shame, and he lowered the gun, running out of the room and out of the house. "No, it can't be," he thought. If Olaf didn't do it, who then? He started the car and drove back home, where he took a bottle of scotch and began drinking. He demanded from his mind to remember all of it, to remember things clearly, without dreams and illusions. His head began hurting, but he didn't take the pills. They would only distract his mind. Halvar emptied the bottle and paced around his room until he collapsed in a corner and wept for his friends. Once again, sleep took over, his body and mind exhausted. This time, the dream picked off as his friends returned with the food. "Where have you been?" Halvar asked. They were gone for nearly 2 hours. Bjarka giggled like a schoolgirl. "We went to get food. They all had red faces and were snickering like teenagers." "Have you been smoking weed?" No, Damus said. They snickered some more. Halvar sighed. "We were supposed to practice tonight. You should chill, Detective Oyolf," their lead singer said. "You can't play that guitar anyway." He turned to the other two. "Hey, maybe we should cut his hair. If he can't play, then he's not a true metal fan and shouldn't have long hair." The three laughed, obviously talking gibberish. But Halvar, being frustrated by his stressful job, having to deal with murderers and psychopaths all day long, just wanted to lose himself in the music with his friends, but for some reason couldn't get the creative juices flowing and had enough. Something snapped. He grabbed his guitar and began playing. The guys turned to him. "Whoa, look at Hall. He's on fire." Halvar played the solo with fury. He struck every note on the spot. "Yeah, man, that's the thing." Then he came to the hard part. He followed Olaf's instructions and sailed through it, racing to the finale. "Seems Hall's been practicing while we were smoking." Halvar's muscles tensed as he got to where he always failed. He struck the notes, one by one, the pick flying over the strings. But his fury was too much. He broke a string, and the guys giggled. Halvar smacked Bjarka straight in his laughing face with the guitar. The man fell over like a chopped log. Then he hit Damus, who was too stoned to register what was going on. Halvar repeatedly hit the man's head until it cracked, and the guitar strings vibrated from the impact, playing a sinister echo. Olaf wanted to run away, but Halvar chopped him down by hitting his side first, and then smashing the man's head. Breathing heavily, feeling all his frustration boiling in him, Halvar screamed and headbanged into the guitar's body repeatedly until he collapsed to the floor, unconscious. The dream shifted outside himself, and he could see Olaf stumbling upon the aftermath. Mortified, Halvar jumped up on his feet as the doorbell rang. His fists were clenched, as though he still held the guitar, and he breathed heavily, confused. He was at home. He just woke up from a dream. Someone was at the door. Did I really kill them? Halvar ran a hand through his sweaty hair and walked to the door. He took one deep breath and opened it. It was Sigfrida, with two other officers by her side, Halvar's colleagues. "Hall?" she said, her voice painful. "Yeah?" he groaned. Bjarka woke up. "We have some questions." Accusation. Pounding the tarmac, she bolted down the garden path like an Olympic champion at the start gun. She quickened her pace to an all-out sprint, whilst the springing, graceful steps of 20 miles earlier had long since disappeared. The slapping noise of her flip-flops resonated around the vandalized walls of the housing estate with a clanging echo. She didn't know where she was, nor did she know where she was heading, but she knew she had to get far away from him. Flashing in her eyes, an image of a wedding dress consumed her thoughts. She wanted to tear it and rip it up and throw it at him. Throw it at the man that she could never marry. For God's sake, I'm only 16. I can't get married, she thought. Tears blinded her, and she turned, running as quickly as her long legs could carry her. She bolted down the alley. The pounding noise of her flip-flops reverberated off the walls of the alley, along with a clanging echo that matched her heart, throbbing inside her chest, filling up with acid. Her legs couldn't go on anymore. There she saw it, a barn It blossomed on the hill amid the grass and the meadow flowers, as if one day it sprung up from some precious seed. I have to go in there, just for a little while, and I will go back home soon, she thought. Opening the door, the smell hit her first as she lugged open the unwieldy, russet-painted door adorned with its tired hinges that creaked like the moaning of cantankerous old men collapsing down. Her legs couldn't carry her anymore. They were filled with toxins, lost in the rhythmic percussions of her steady breathing. She closed her eyes and imagined herself in college and getting a degree. However, that dream seemed so unrealistic, invading her steady breaths. A sound of murmuring pervaded the ambience, and it was coming from outside. Lifting herself up, she carried herself forward and looked out of the cracks in the door. In the middle, a man was begging on his knees. She saw that his face was bearing with the congealed blood, and his clothes were in an utter mess. However, they showed him no mercy. Surrounding him, a tall man was clutching onto his shirt and ripping it apart. In front of him, a much slender man gave him a red eye. His left eye was swollen. He couldn't be seeing a thing out of that, and his face was more purple than brown. She couldn't look. Her eyes widened, and lip trembled. Plummeting onto the floor, the man laid there. He was dead. Calling out from a distance, she could hear a voice telling them to bury him there. Nevertheless, she couldn't see who it was and couldn't seem to recognize this voice. Just like minions, all the men dug holes with shovels and buried the man, leaving no evidence behind. Tears burst forth like water from a dam spilling across her face. The muscle of her chin trembled like a small child. Salty drops fell from her chin, drenching her kurti. Many thoughts pervaded into her mind. She had never seen these people before, even though she lived in a small village in Pakistan. Going towards the way she came, she ran back home. I can't be here anymore, she thought. Howling wildly, the rain lashes the concrete breeze that made her lose control. She ran through a maze of buildings and winding side streets as the sky rumbled, and heavy rain bounced off the cobblestones. A storm smothered the sun, graying the world around her. Drops of rain beat against her skin like hammers. Reaching home, she ran up to her apartment and banged on the door. Getting inside, she ran to her room and closed the door. Overpowering all her emotions, the face of the dead man haunted her, playing the story over and over again. She fell asleep and let her thoughts turn all her dreams into nightmares. Waking up in the morning, she turned on the news and waited. There is a kind of waiting that feels like gentle, onshore breezes kissing salty stones. Nevertheless, this is not what she was feeling today. The news finished, and there was nothing about this missing man. How strange, she thought. Months go on, and there is no sign of this man. Befuddlement infiltrated into her mind. Who was this man? And most importantly, why was he dead? After months of waiting, she saw it. Sitting there on the sofa, she saw it on the news. It was exactly the same man that got killed, and apparently he was missing. So they didn't know that he's dead, she thought. Her mouth pursed and slightly loosed. She looked up at the TV, her eyes fixed, as if this was the only thing that mattered in this world. She had to go, running forward. She had to stop. She wheezes as her burning lungs gasp for air. Her legs feel numb and unsteady, painfully sore. Her throat felt dry, so uncomfortably dry. Clothes' long, blonde-brown hair were clinging onto the tarmac, no different than if she runs through a rainstorm. Unable to go on, she stopped running, gasping for air, but she knew she had to go on. At the corner of the road, there lay walls as thick as the medieval castle, and windows almost as mean. There's no flicker of light within, and the thick wooden doors were closed. Going into the police station, she felt a soft panic growing inside of her. The steps she took were just increasing this amount. It will fade if I back away, but then I have to do this all again another time. It will grow if I let these thoughts swirl into a vortex of stupidity, eating their own tail. Or I can breathe real slow, let the thoughts leak into the ether, and be the real boss of myself, she thought. Approaching the officer, she sat down and told him about what she had seen that night. She told him about the beating and about them burying the dead man. Walking past him, a tall man looked at her, and suddenly she remembered him. It was the same man that clung to his shirt that night. Getting up off her seat, she pointed at the tall man. Sweat trickled down her face and etched marks onto her skin. But she had to do this. Miss, I think you are getting a bit hysterical here. This man works with us, and he would never do such a thing, said the officer. Whist. He examined her up and down. He couldn't understand her. She looked like she was telling the truth. But Hassan couldn't have done this. I do trust him, thought the officer, and he was part of the Commander League, and is soon to get promoted into officer. Telling her to wait in the courtroom, he dismisses her so that he could talk to other members of the department. Just stepping into the courtroom is making her breathing rapid and shallow. She can feel her pulse pounding in her temples. It's a relief to get to the chair. Otherwise, I would have tripped, she thought. Now, only silence lingers in the air. She shivers in the claustrophobic common room and waits for the signal. But a small sigh of anxiety leaps out of her mouth. Tersely, her eyes flicker to the building's whist. She bit her nails to the core, beckoning her to come in. The same officer takes her back into the office. However, they go further in, and it's like nowhere she has actually ever seen before. The fear sits on her like a pillow over her mouth and nose. Doubting her decisions, she tells herself that she had made the right decision. Once again, fear found her. It spoke to her in its cackling voice. It told her legs to go weak, her stomach to lurch, and her heart to ache, as that is what happened to her. She knew she had to keep going, because the truth was just seconds away. Stepping into an exquisite office, she could see the posters hanging and the files stacked up neatly. Getting introduced to the other officers, she sat down, and in the process, she saw the slender man and recognized him immediately, because he was the one who punched the dead man, and instantaneously, she got off her seat. This is the man who punched the dead man. Laughing hysterically, all the officers got up off their seats and surrounded her, just like they did with the dead man. The officer who she met first started talking. "I believe that it is you who killed him," said the officer. "Isn't that right, Commander Abad?" "Yes," replied the commander. The voice sounded so familiar in her head, but why she thought. Then it clicked in. He was voice who told them to bury the dead man. Feeling an overwhelming feeling of disgust, she stood up and went towards the commander. "You did all of this," she snarled. "No, I didn't. Officers, can you please put her behind bars? And that is an order," replied the commander. Locking up her hands, the officers grabbed into her shoulders and took her away. Trying to justify her case, she had no luck. The constricted feeling grew inside of her, as if she was strangled by just the air about her. She glances upward to the surface, and her heart rate rises. The voice of caution whispers softly not to rise so fast, but it can't break through the scream for unfiltered rays and fresh air. From the moment she saw it, it repulsed her. These walls cannot hold a prayer, nor can hold a spirit. And I belong here, she thought. Surrounded by 4 white walls, there was nothing else to do but stare at them, to look at the paint that had started to chip off as time passed, or gouged by other prisoners. Anything to pass time, slowly going mad, theorizing absurd meanings from the wall's blank stare. And this is what I would be doing here, she thought, getting thrown into prison. She screamed and shouted like there was no tomorrow, and flung her arms across the cell. I can't stay here, she thought, and not for something I didn't even do. I did not kill the man. It wasn't me, she shouted. But no one heard her. No one ever did. A family man. Chill wind blew down the long asphalt street in Palestine, Texas, picking up sud-like dust and limply turning over dead, dry leaves. The town was tired and quiet. Only a handful of pickups drove leisurely down the street. Jason Lynn, Pennsylvania, sat behind the counter of Americo Bank, shiny shoes propped up in his neighbor's empty chair, white collar unbuttoned, killing floor open on his lap. His head tipped back against the rim of the sleek swivel chair, snoring. He was the kind of man who would go bald early, but not care. The kind of man who'd get a tattoo at 40 to prove he was cool. The kind of man who was actually cool, not because of the tattoo, but because he told good jokes. Pennsylvania owned the Palestine branch of Americo Bank, but did most of the hiring, telling, and counting himself. Cheaper this way, he'd tell Americo's division manager on the phone. "But ain't you a family man?" the manager would say. The manager was a Wichita Falls man who'd grown up taking out the trash for Americo and worked his way up. Most of his underlings liked him. He had a snaggletooth and uneven sunburns, and went on jogs in the morning in bright orange jumpsuits. "Yeah, but this is how you take care of a family. I got the boys to think of." "Well, okay, son, you take care." "Thanks, bud. Bye." Pennsylvania jerked awake when the clock chimed 8 and smacked his lips. Killing floor slipped off his lap and bounced on the ground, which startled him. He looked over the counter, saw nothing, leaned back, and closed his eyes once more. Outside the bank, on the dry, dusty street, a little banged-up black Toyota parked crooked on the curb. The Toyota sat in the shade cast by the big stone bank, cooling off with little pings and a long sigh. Then the doors unlocked, and 5 teenagers got out. The driver was a tall boy with white hair. The girl in the passenger seat was short and smiley. The 3 others were triplets, all boys with sandy brown hair and identical grins. One of them had a backpack slung over his right shoulder. They looked at each other timidly, almost fearfully, like a group of seamen about to push off from shore and never see home again. One of the triplets said, "You sure you want to do this, Jack?" "Of course, moron. You scared?" The triplet shrugged. "It just... well, Penn's a fun guy. You know he was the one who brought watermelon for the potluck on Thanksgiving?" "Yeah," said his brother. "Where'd he get that?" The 3 brown-haired boys burst into laughter. They knew where he'd gotten it. He'd told them the day before the potluck. Penn was like that. "Shut up," the girl said, shoving one of them off the sidewalk. "Ouch, Callie." "Okay then," Jack said, running a hand through his white hair. "Let's go." The group entered the bank, easing open the glass doors without a whisper. Behind them, dry leaves scraped across the concrete sidewalk noisily, pushed along by the wind, which always seemed to be going nowhere. The 5 of them spread out, looking dead ahead as they pulled hoodies over their heads and scarves or a parent's bandana to cover their mouth and nose. Jack and his crew edged forward over the burnished granite floor. The triplets exchanged worried, excited glances, eyes crinkled up to betray identical, gleeful smiles. Jack and Callie closed in together, shoulders touching like the ranks of Roman soldiers. Jason, Pennsylvania, dozed behind the counter, the calloused fingers of his left hand barely brushing the spine of his book. Jack whispered to Callie, "Where the hell is he? Bank's open, right? Duh. Maybe he's on a break or something. He'd have left someone behind if he just took a break." Jack leaned over the counter and jumped back as if bitten by a rattlesnake. "There he is," he hissed. Callie forcibly turned one of the triplets around, unzipped his backpack, and removed a gun. "Whoa," the triplet whispered. "Is that thing real?" "Hell no," Callie said, smirking. "It's just a toy, an airsoft gun. Looks real. I took the orange thing off the front of it." The boy looked at his two brothers. "Isn't that illegal?" Callie smirked again. "Damn right." They winced and said together, "Stop swearing." She looked like she was about to hit them, thought better of it, and turned around. "Sorry to injure your little church-going ears," she said out the corner of her mouth. Callie walked right up, the three boys behind her, like three toddlers caught stealing cookies, and slammed the fake gun on the counter. "Wake up, old man," she shouted, and lifted the gun so it pointed at the banker. Pennsylvania jerked awake and pushed his glasses back on his nose. He started to stand, but Callie shouted, "Turn around! Hands up! I have a gun!" His jaw dropped, but he did as she said. "Callie?" he asked. "Callie Roberts?" Jack shouted roughly. "Turn the cameras off right now." Pennsylvania shrugged, his hands still up. "I don't keep 'em on." "Open the door," one of the boys said in a thin voice. Callie elbowed him sharply, and he cleared his throat and said more firmly, "Open the door." Penn started at his voice, but turned and walked to the door between the bank lobby and behind the counter. Slowly, he pulled a key from his pocket and unlocked the door. He returned the key to his pocket, hands shaking slightly, as the 5 kids ran past him. Their faces were bright underneath their masks, eyes shining, separating the group and fleeing to various half-open deposit boxes. Jack let out a maniacal giggle as he scooped handfuls of mostly counted change into his hoodie pockets and the backpack. "Why don't you lock these boxes up, old man?" he shouted. Penn shook his head. "I trust you guys," he said simply, hands in pockets. "What?" Callie said after an awkward pause. She and Jack laughed, but the triplets' eyes, barely visible over their bandanas, filled with tears. Their bandanas were bright green and stenciled with their dad's initials. JLP. Jack waved his crew out. Callie kept the gun pointed at Penn's head as they backed out of the bank, faces flushed with success. Just before the doors swung shut, Pennsylvania looked straight at the triplets. Their eyes met. 4 pairs of identical eyes. Penn gave them a short, sad smile. When the black Toyota had disappeared down the cold, empty street, Penn sat down again and called the police. "Hi, Rick. I was just robbed. Can you go after him?" "Yeah, a black Toyota, it looked like. I didn't catch the license, but it's the Hoover's car. Jack Hoover. Yeah, Hoover. Yes, Hoover. Thanks. And, oh, Rick, give him the whole speech, will you? My boys were in that group. No, not a kidnapping. I saw him, though. They know it ain't right. Just make sure they know it. I know they'll do right. I raised 'em right." "Yeah, well, thanks. I appreciate it." Pennsylvania leaned back with a sigh. After a moment, without cleaning up the mess of bills and hanging open deposit doors, he picked up his book again. The Toyota tore down the highway, a trail of dead cottonwood leaves following. Callie drove this time, the needle not dipping below 70, and Jack sat in the back seat. Both grinned hard, masks and hoodies down. "Hey, where's the backpack?" Callie asked as Palestine disappeared behind them, and empty planes surrounded the lonely car. Jack looked around. "I don't know. You don't have it?" Their eyes met in the rearview mirror. "Those 3, she spat. "Those... Ooh." Her hands clenched on the steering wheel. "We shouldn't have dropped them off. We should have made them come all the way. They were wimps," she responded. "I thought it was good riddance. And Mac hates kids like them buying from him." Her eyes narrowed down the highway. "Think they got cold feet? I know so. They're probably gonna tell." "What do you want to do?" Callie shrugged. "We got some in our pockets, right? That's probably enough. Mac doesn't like change, though. He said 20s or nothing." She sighed. "Well, damn it, Jack. I don't know. I want to go find them and throttle them. We shouldn't have let them come along. It was an adventure for the kids," Callie said desperately. "They wanted to do it, wanted to be the bad boys. Why am I trying to defend them?" Jack snickered. "They took our money," she shrieked. "You know what I think? I bet they're taking it back to their dad." They glared at each other. "I want to commit another crime," Callie said after a minute. "This time, let's commit murder." Jack laughed, then said, "Wait, are you serious?" She nodded. "They put in life for a murder, not for minors." "Yeah, for minors." She shook her head. "It'd be worth it. I want to teach those bastards you don't cross your own teammates." A sleek police car sped far behind them, wind tearing through the open windows, light flashing, horns blaring. The driver sat intent behind the wheel as 3 brown-headed boys talked quickly over each other in the back seat. The getaway. The door was waiting for him, already open for a quick entrance into the inconspicuous car. Tony ran as fast as he could, chucking the duffel bags full of money into the back as he more or less dove into the passenger seat. "Drive!" Tony screamed at Jackie, "Drive, goddammit! Drive!" Jackie. Scaletta did not need to be told. Before Tony had even entered the vehicle, he had popped the clutch into drive. Before the passenger door was even closed, he tore down the road like a bat out of hell. Tires screeched like a woman getting murdered as the unnoticeable but powerful car growled down Lexington Street. A traffic light had just turned red as the car ran through it, narrowly avoiding collision with an expensive luxury vehicle. The driver honked loudly, laying on the horn in shock and frustration. But neither Jackie nor Tony D'Amato gave it much notice. They were too fixed on the wailing of police car sirens already going off in the distance. Coming after them. "We did it, Jackie!" Tony screamed more than said. "We just robbed Lexington Bank, the cream of the crop. We are gold, my friend." Jackie only nodded in reply. He was too busy focusing on the road, maneuvering cars, hopping onto the sidewalk and the wrong side of the roads to say anything. Tony was shaking and excited as a child who had just scored the game-winning touchdown in a pee-wee football game. But Jackie was calm and collected. A professional getaway driver, if there ever was one. "Just a little bit further. We'll be over state lines. Then after that, on our way to Mexico to live like kings, Jackie." We did. Whoa, look out! A wall of police cruisers was creating a blockade to the entrance of the interstate. Tony grew nervous immediately. Visions of himself and Jackie being torn up by a barrage of Tommy gun fire flashed through his mind. Torn apart by bullets as they did to Bonnie and Clyde. However, Jackie had prepared for this. He knew what to do. "Hold on to something," Jackie said, with the coolness of an ice-cold killer. His face was determined, his eyes focused. "Hold on," Tony shouted. "Hold on to what?" He reacted just in time as Jackie popped the wheels on the shoulder of the entrance, scraping the passenger side of the car against the cement barriers that blocked cars from falling down the steep hill. "Fuck! Fuck! Fuck!" Tony shouted. Sparks flew like crazy fireworks off his side of the vehicle, he noticed with wide eyes. The getaway car had attacked the weak spot of the barricade. Cops dove out of the way in fear as the driver's side of the car clipped a police cruiser in the rear bumper. The collision was hard enough to knock the law enforcement car on its side. Gunshots fired harmlessly as the getaway car merged with the interstate traffic. The road to freedom. "We made it! Holy shit! Jackie, you old son of a bitch! We made it!" Tony hollered. He was shaking in excitement and fear. A bit of shock had also clouded his mind. He vomited quickly but violently out the window. "Calm down, paisan," Jackie said calmly. "We aren't free yet. Look behind us." Tony swore when he turned his head to see black and white cop cars following behind. Traffic had pulled over to the sides of the road to allow a path for the police to drive through. Tony had visions of Moses parting the Red Sea upon seeing this. "What do we do?" Tony asked, horrified again. "You let me do my job," Jackie told his childhood friend calmly. "You did your part. Now it's my time to shine." He gunned the accelerator once again. The engine of the car growled like a lion on the attack. Except they were the antelope, and the police, the lions. The rear windshield imploded with a sharp snap as glass fell to the floor of the car. "They're shooting at us," Tony yelped. Another bullet hit the metal of the car's exterior with a loud knocking sound. "Well?" Jackie told Tony, like a father teaching his son a lesson. "Fire back." Tony reached between his legs for the weapon. A Thompson machine gun with a 50-round drum loaded. He racked the first shot into the chamber, aimed intently at the leading cop car, and squeezed the trigger. The gun went off, sounding like a barrage of drums, vibrating off the walls. The car Tony had been aiming at lost control and collided with a semi-truck that was pulled over. One down. How many more to go? Tony asked himself in his mind. "Good job," Jackie said calmly, still focusing on winding through the traffic on the highway. Most drivers had gotten the message and pulled off where they could, but a few stubborn ones kept on going like nothing was happening. Great. Now we have a cop murder to add to our list, Jackie's mind told him. He shook his head to clear the thought away. The car stank of burnt gunpowder, and a ringing accompanied the ears of both men as Tony loaded another drum into the rifle. "Don't shoot unless they shoot first," Jackie spoke. "Or if they get too close, even still, try aiming for the tires." "Don't worry, I don't intend on killing anybody unless I have to," Tony replied. Jackie was thankful for this sentence from his friend. They weren't murderers. There was no one else Jackie would aid robbing a bank with. A bullet shattered a small hole in the windshield. It narrowly missed Jackie's throat. His blood went cold as he felt the ripple of air pass by his skin. A second one ripped another spot through the windshield. This one hitting its mark. "Fuck," Tony yelped, throwing his right hand onto his left arm. Blood stained his fingers. Another barricade stood ahead. This 1-3 rows deep, with paddy wagons and cruisers blocking the interstate. "Tony!" Jackie shouted, momentarily taking his eyes off the path to look at his friend. "Are you okay?" "Yeah," Tony spoke through gritted teeth. "Just took some muscle and skin. Missed the bone. I need you to lay some covering fire when I say," Jackie told him. "What are we gonna do, buddy?" Tony asked. His pain was, at the moment, dulled by the fear that their escape had come to an end. No Mexico. The bullet would have to be extracted from his arm. "Just wait," Jackie replied, his voice getting lower and lower as he repeated, "Wait, wait, wait. Okay, now. Fire," Jackie screamed. Tony leaned out the window, and sprayed a barrage of bullets out of the end of the machine gun, aiming over the cops' heads. It was enough to scare the uniformed men to duck behind their vehicles as Jackie screamed the car over the grassy area between the lanes of the interstate, straightening on the wrong side as family cruisers and semi-trucks came dangerously close to head-on collisions with them. He rolled back onto the right side of the road once they had cleared the barricade, passing a sign that happily welcomed the two into the next state. "We made it!" Tony shouted. "Holy Christ, Jackie! You did it! We are clear! Bravo, paisano!" They had made it into the next state. Tomorrow morning, they would ditch the vehicle and get into another one to make the drive into Mexico. They were not safe yet. There was still the worry of a nationwide manhunt or getting stopped at the border. But for now, Jackie Scaletta and Tony D'Amato were safe. They continued down the interstate,